Oh, step back and light skin.
Welcome everyone to the am I allowed to say this? Sure? Okay. The Light Skinned Opinion Podcast with your host, author, and culture commentator Chris Maddox, blogger and overall asshole Alf954. And there's no way I'm saying this. It's offensive. Sure this is okay? Fine. And our dark-skinned producer, Parrish Thompson. What do we have today, boys? I mean, guys, not boys, because... Oh, fuck it.
Oh, 1 2 1 2 1 2. It's the LSO crew. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Light Skin Opinions Podcast. I'm your host, Christopher Maddox, and it is time.
Oh, step.
That's my bad. Go ahead. This is why Parrish should produce and not me. Where's Brass when you need him?
It's early, man. It's early. We're not used to this shit.
Yeah,
It
this
is early.
We are recording at 10 a.m. on a Thursday.
I was going to say I like this time slot, though. I wish we could do this more often.
I know.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's call it breakfast with LSO. Good morning. You got your avocado toast, your eggs. Alf probably has some bratwurst and cheese or something. Look at Alf. He look like he eat bratwurst for breakfast.
You lucky I'm trying to pull clips of shit right now. I don't got time for your nonsense. Go ahead.
He eat it whole too. He don't like cut it in half or nothing. He just walk around the house with a bratwurst
With
on the fork.
Cold, too. Cold.
Attack the morning. All right, so
Said cold bratwurst.
welcome everybody. Light Skin Opinions Podcast. And we're here today as we start off this show, jokey as we usually do. We actually have some pretty weighty topics. And as you see, we have a guest with us today. So everybody, let's virtually give a standing ovation and rousing applause to our man, Jack. You can find him at Alfonso Hoops. Jack works with Alf on Miami Heat Beat. He does a pregame show. Do you guys ever have any confusion between Alphonse and Alfonso? Y'all
He's the primary Alf.
He's the primary Alf.
He's taken over the Alf name. I've got like a third of the followers. Nobody watches the pregame, so it's fine. I'll give it to Alf.
It's literally called the Weird Alf pregame show. He's a Weird Alf, and I'm, I guess, regular Alf.
Oh,
This is the normal Alf. This is the
Bratwurst
All right, so welcome, Jack. And Jack is with us today because we've been kind of chilling this summer, just to be honest. We've been kind of chilling this summer. And but Alf sent a text out, a little Voltron text yesterday saying, yo, we have to do a show because there's a lot going on in our hemisphere here, both politically and economically and everything. And, we love to get on here and run our mouths and talk about what we think, hence the name of the show, Light Skin Opinions. But we're not above having someone who's got a little bit more insight join us to share their opinions or their ideas on what it is we're talking about. Now, if we had a word of the week or word of the day for today's show, it would have been agency. And in particular, we're talking about like the agency that individuals have or like that individuals crave. Right now, there are protests. This week, there have been protests raging on the island nation of Cuba and in Miami as people have reached a boiling point over their lack of agency. Just to give a brief overview here before we get into the conversation, things are tough on the island of Cuba, and we've known that for a long time. We've known that for a while. But these latest protests are after I was reading an article this morning. I didn't realize that Raul Castro made those announcements that like he was going to be making changes to the economy, and he did all of that in 2010. I was like, damn, B, like in my mind, that was like 5 years ago. You know what I mean? But I can imagine being a Cuban living on the island. And a guy gets up, y'all have been living under, communist rule forever. And he says, hey, look, we're going to change some things. You're going to be able to own your own businesses. You're going to be able to make a little bit of your own money. We're going to kind of get out the way. and then 12 years passes, and you're like, wait a minute. And then in those 12 years, Corona hits, which completely demolishes the economy of the island, as it was already on its way down. You know, they got two currencies, the Cuban peso and then something else, and all kind of stuff going on. And people said, you know what? I've had enough. So, Jack, I don't know if you can give us if there's something I'm missing in that overview or there's some more nuance to it, because our listeners, you know, this might be their real entree into whatever this topic is. You know what I'm saying? So you go ahead and tell us like what's really up.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, I don't want to, I guess, presume to be some kind of expert on what's going on in Cuba because I don't live there. And I think there's a pretty substantial difference between Cuban Americans and Cubans in Cuba. So, I mean, we can get into that at some point, the differences between the protests in Miami and the protests in Cuba. But yeah, I think you pretty much hit the nail on the head. Ever since the 90s, since the Soviet Union collapsed, they've had like no support from other world powers.
No. Yeah.
And they've just been on life support, and there's just not the resources there. And, you know, if you grew up in that generation, you didn't grow up in a generation where you had any familiarity with the actual revolution itself. Your only knowledge of Cuba is of, you know, shortages, poverty, and
Blackouts.
you know, blackouts and stuff like that. So they've just been not in a great way since the Soviet Union collapsed. I know I don't want to make it some big thing about capitalism versus communism because that seems like an oversimplification. And, you know, there are other countries like Vietnam that are doing perfectly well and have like transitioned to more like market central economies. And Cuba has not done certain things that maybe they could have done to survive more. So,
bro, I read an article this morning getting ready for this. The head of the Communist Party in Vietnam all the time.
Oh,
first of all, I didn't know, and this is something that's going to sound crazy. I didn't know the Communist Party was still running Vietnam. Like, we really lost that war, B. Like, damn. I thought the whole purpose of that war was to be like, I thought the whole purpose was to say.
I think that's a widely held belief that we
I knew we lost it, but I'm like, I knew we lost it. I knew we lost it.
Super lost that motherfucker. Like,
but I was like, damn, we lost it to the point where there are still communists running Vietnam right now. But anyway,
our soldiers got booed by Americans when they came home and spit on. Like, that's a lost war. You know what I mean?
So the head of the Communist Party in Vietnam went to Havana in 2018. It was like, yo, y'all got to switch up. And I'm sitting here, I'm reading the article. I'm like, damn, if the buddy from Vietnam is coming to you and saying, hey, man, y'all boys tripping, you might want to listen to that. You might want to say, wait, folks, these folks went to war with America, toe to toe. They're still standing all of these years later. China, obviously the big example, they have like this quasi free market communist situation. I don't know what it is about what's going on in Cuba where they are just so. But another thing you said, Jack, and then I'll be quiet. The guy who is running it now, Canal, the new president in Cuba, in his speech, he says, we need revolutionaries on the street. You made me think about this when you said, if you're of this generation, what do you know about the revolution? And I'm like, oh, y'all really stuck in the past. Like, you're calling for revolutionaries to get in the street, nigga. There are no revolutionaries. Like, who are the revolutionaries unless they are revolting against you? Like, you're in power.
Well, go ahead, Jack. I'm sorry.
Well, I mean, I will say, yeah, it's definitely this kind of split between, you know, the revolution was over 60 years ago at this point. If you have a memory of exactly, if you have a memory of the revolution, you're not quite young and spry, and then
you're old. Just say it, man. You're old.
You're old as fuck.
You're old as
frankly.
Shit.
And then beyond that, there have been, you know, some people who have been known as pretty hardcore communist, hardcore pro-revolutionary figures in Cuba over, you know, the past 50 or so years. Los Van Van is a pretty huge band in Cuba, pretty huge band in terms of post-revolutionary Cuba. They're synonymous with the revolution.
Like
huge musical act, musical act. Yeah. And
are they the U2 of Cuba?
I don't know what the comparison would be, but yeah, sure. They're the
Damn, that's an odd comparison.
They're the Pearl Jam of Cuba.
They're the Red Hot Chili Peppers of Cuba.
The Red Hot Chili Peppers of Cuba. But they came out recently. They, wasn't the most harsh statement in the world, but it was pretty critical of, police violence against Cuban protesters, which is significant because that's not the way Cubans operate, because there's been just mass suppression. So to hear any voice of dissent, especially from longtime communists, is something that, is signaling some kind of sea change. I think the Treasury Secretary also condemned the police violence and stepped down. So, or the Minister of the Interior, sorry about that. So yeah, some things are happening, and you can't just attribute it all to, Miami Cubans being mad as they always have.
Well, Jack, that's kind of one of the questions I wanted to get into, because I think you see it kind of like I do, where there's a huge difference between what is happening in Miami and what is happening in Cuba, because what we're talking about are the failures of the Cuban government. And we can also get into why the Cuban government, why communism failed in Cuba. And there's a lot of reasons, but partially some of that falls on the United States, the embargo, just basically choking the life out of Cuba. They never really had a chance to succeed. And who knows if they would have succeeded anyway, because they have there's an authoritarian nature to the way they run their government, with or without the United States' influence. So who knows if it ever would have worked, but it could never work when the biggest power to the north is choking the life out of you, basically, through the embargo. Well, with that being said, the Cubans on the ground in Cuba are dying of COVID, of hunger, and this embargo isn't helping. And then speak a little bit about the Miami protest and some of the hypocrisy that's involved when you're talking about people that want to uphold the embargo, people who love Trump, authoritarianism, and basically the hypocrisy between what's happening here and then what's actually happening in Cuba.
Yeah. First of all, I'll say on the embargo that obviously it doesn't help anybody. That's kind of the point of it. You're trying to stranglehold the Cuban people. That's the whole idea, is that you'll make conditions worse and then they'll rise up. It happens in the Middle East, and anywhere it happens, it's terrible. Horrible. It's really inhumane. It has nothing to do with the government. You're just trying to force desperation on the people of suffering from whatever government already. Yeah.
You're forcing them into a corner until the idea that the people will rise up and,
and that's never sustainable, but yeah.
It's unsustainable and it's inhumane. And there are certain things where you could argue maybe the revolution goes a completely different direction, because Che Guevara and Castro and the other leaders of the revolution, Raul, were not necessarily communists in the USSR sense, but they had to kind of become more USSR type communists to buddy up to them, because that was the other world power. And you say, well, we're a tiny island. We can produce sugar, but we have to be involved in trade at some point.
Sugar and doctors.
Yeah, sugar and doctors. So, you have to trade for the other stuff. That will cover, a lot of it, but not quite all of it. And then the protests, I guess, it's one of those things where I've been conflicted about it, and I've kind of had a pit in my stomach, because obviously I want change in some degree. As you said, it doesn't really matter if it's the embargo or the government purely. Conditions are not great, and something needs to change. However,
people are suffering no matter what.
Yeah, but they get into political conversations about it, but at the end of the day, it really comes down to some people don't have stuff to eat.
Isn't it?
And that's the thing that. Go ahead, P. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask a question. I was going to say, doesn't it? Always come down to who's in charge politically.
Not necessarily, because you could listen, even if they wanted to do right by the Cuban people, which you can say that there are people that have had good intentions for the Cuban people. If they don't have the resources to do right by their people, the government will never be able to work. So I'm not saying that communism works. I don't believe in communism, but I'm saying they never actually had it. ever since the fall of the Soviet Union, to Jack's point, they've never had they've never had the resources or the chance to even make it work.
Well, their next big ally was Venezuela, and then we saw Venezuela fall apart.
I was going to ask you, but the infrastructure, though, and I didn't mean to cut you off, Chris. My bad. Just to, on my piggyback my question, but like the blackouts that happen daily, it's like how do they fix that? I mean, that's like what is that?
That's infrastructure, and that's all of that, like you say, yeah.
It's
but that's because to build a country, you need more than sugar and doctors, like Jack was saying. Like you have to build.
I love this sugar and doctors thing.
You got to build all of that. But I want to go back real quick because I've been confused about this. With
and I know Jack has to go soon.
Yes, that's what I'm trying to get to him with the Miami Cuban population. When Barack opened up ties with Cuba, they hated it, from what I understand. No, you didn't get enough. You didn't get enough concessions. You didn't force Cuba to have to give anything. You just opened up the government. And we know as black people, every black person I know was trying to catch a flight to Cuba to get their Instagram photos. And they was going over there spending hella money. Tourism is the third largest, you know what I mean? And then so Trump comes in, he locks all the shit up tight again. And everybody down here is like, yay. And now they're saying we're struggling down here. And everybody in Miami's like, we're standing in solidarity with you struggling. And I'm like, but shouldn't that be? Yeah, like I'm like, shouldn't you want the country open, even if it just means so that you can go and you can bring remittances to your people or whatever. I'm confused about what the Cuban population in Miami, what exactly they want. I know they want the Castros gone and out. I know that, but I don't know if that's happening. So, what am I missing in that whole thing?
They just want to win. I mean, it's really, there's no concern for, that's a little unfair, but a lot of Cubans who came over in the first or second wave of immigration after the revolution, they've been in America longer than they've been in Cuba. And so, I mean, they're American, and that's fine, but their feelings towards Cuba in large part are born out of bitterness and spite and, trauma, and that's perfectly valid, but there are a lot of, I guess my confliction with the Miami Cuban protests is I don't ever feel settled when I'm on the same side as Ron DeSantis and Marco Rubio and all these MAGA people outside of Versailles. Like, there's a lot of bullshit going on, and that's kind of where my position as a Cuban American, to a certain extent, I just have to stay out of it to a certain extent. And, I have cousins there, I have uncles there in Cuba who, have some kind of stake in the actual government they're a part of. If you're living in Miami, you haven't been a part of the Cuban government for decades. And so at a certain point, your opinion should just matter less. And it doesn't seem like it's all coming from good faith, as you said. A lot of older Cubans are super supportive of the embargo, and now they're even more supportive of the embargo because they say we got them on the ropes now. It's actually working now.
Yeah.
And then that's where they really give the game away, because they're like, the Cuban people, I really care about the Cuban people.
Yeah.
But then they're like, but we just got to choke them a little harder and then things will change. It's
with the embargoes and things, the guys in power aren't the ones getting hurt by the embargoes. Like even with North Korea, like you can put as many embargoes as you want. Kim Jong-un, the buddies in charge in Cuba, they're going to get the stake they want to get.
Chris, I know Jack got to go. Jack,
yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on, Jack. I know you got a Zoom meeting.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Wish I could have hopped on longer, but thanks for talking with me about this.
All right.
No problem, man. You gave us a lot of good info.
Yeah, man.
Thanks.
Peace.
See you.
Yes, sir. But that's what I'm saying. Like with these embargoes, like it never works. The niggas in charge is always going to get their steaks, their brandies. They going to get what they want to get because they the niggas in charge. Like, it's the people underneath.
It's just like the people here still get their Cuban cigars, the ones with money.
Yeah, I got some in my car right now.
Wow, giving up the game, bro. Give it up.
Hey, they in my car right now. Somebody gave them to me. Like, people go to the Bahamas. You can get into the Bahamas.
That's the feds at the door right there.
But that's the thing I don't understand the most about the situation, like the Cuban Americans, because they say they're they're against Castro, but then they're for like DeSantis and Trump, and I don't understand how
because DeSantis and Trump have made it part of their political shit to be like, we ain't never gonna let Cuba open up, nigga. We always gonna be on their neck.
And listen, let's not
like
just
Jack was saying. There's some people who feel that.
Let's not just restrict it to Republicans, because before Obama, it was every Democratic president. Yeah. Everybody was trying to keep their foot on Cuba's neck
because of the communist thing. You know,
because of the
communism.
And
even
then,
now, Joe Biden won't change not changed
Obama's the only one who said, okay, we have to, and whatever his reasoning was, we have to do something to actually help the people of Cuba.
Here's what I agree with Obama with that. I was like, okay, open up. Oh, you ain't getting no concessions. What concessions do you want from a country that's struggling to feed itself? What concessions do you want?
We trade with all kinds of dictators and authoritarians all over the world. The reason behind all this is because the Cubans in Miami hold a lot of political power. They basically can flip Florida for anybody at any given election.
Yeah.
So, and we're talking about governors, senators, president, and Florida's a huge state. That is the reason behind all this, because the Cubans, the older Cubans in Miami want the embargo to stay. They want the Castros out. They want to get rid of communism. So despite the fact that even we have seen that it doesn't work over the last 30 years, that this embargo is not working, all it is doing is hurting people, they will stick with it because they want the votes. It's all political.
Yeah, it's all political because guess what? The Castros are out. Fidel is dead. Yeah. Raul Castro is retired and is basically out of government. I mean, and what did they do? They just passed it on to a hand-picked guy. At some point, what I was thinking with Barack was, who cares if the country thrives? It's going to be a small little communist island. Like, they ain't got no friends. You know what I'm saying? Like, who cares? What concessions do you let them people grow? Let them eat. Let them do what they doing. If they still want to
when it was a strategic base for the Soviet Union, I get it.
I get it. You know, the Bay of Pigs, you know, but Cuban Missile Crisis, I understand.
But now it's just cruelty. And the thing of it is, the people that are still there look like this panel right now. And there is a sting of racism throughout the protests in Miami. There's MAGA flags. Like, what does Trump have to do with anything?
With any of it.
So you don't actually care about what's happening to the people in Cuba. This is an opportunistic. They're jumping on. It's opportunistic what they're doing. They're jumping on this movement, this SOS Cuba movement. That isn't. There's some evidence of the fact that it is not even. It's not a natural movement. This was created by bots, and it spread quickly on the internet. But that's conspiracy theory, whatever. Go beyond that. They do not care about the people in Cuba. Like they do is care about a political win they could get through the people in Cuba suffering, and it's gross.
That's it. Right. And my dad was my dad's a black revolutionary dude. Like, my dad thought Che Guevara and Fidel Castro, he thought they was doing the right thing in what he told me, right? But my dad also made a very big point. I never forget it. We were watching the Atlanta Olympics, the big Olympics, Muhammad Ali, everything. And when the Cuban delegation came out, my dad was like, yo, look, and I mean, they dark skinned like Parrish. Mm-hmm. You feel me? I'm like, oh shit. And then up until that point, I associated Cubans with the Cubans you see in Miami, which are primarily white Cubans, I guess, for lack of
Afro-Cubans are in Cuba.
Mm-hmm. I mean, a bunch of them.
And they don't, and that's the people here don't care about those people.
That's what rang in my head when Jack was like, yo, that's why the embargo to them is, cool. And
to Parrish's point, like, okay, I'm Haitian. Things going on in Haiti right now are fucked up. It would be like me saying, U.S., do not send any aid to my people who are dying. Let more of them die, as many of them die as possible, so that there can be a revolution. There's a revolution in Haiti every other fucking week. Like, I was talking to my dad about it. I was like, I didn't even know who this new president was. Every other week there's a revolution. Like, I I have distributors in Haiti, and I'll be like, "Oh, are you ready for your order?" Like, no, not this week. They rioting. I'm like, all right, how about? Well, I'll call you next week because they might not.
We at war this week, cuz.
But like, what? Like, as a Haitian, who cares about the people of Haiti? My mother, who does mission trips to Haiti. My dad, both my parents have charities that benefit Haiti. They would never say, "Oh, let's not send aid to Haiti and let's hope a revolution comes."
That's even after the poor experience with the Clintons, because at some point you have to say, "Hey, look, bad things happen, people mess stuff up, but that should not turn us away from the goal."
10 million gets donated, and only 2 million make it to the island. That's 2 million more than what they made it before. Right. And next time we'll try a different avenue. And this is the thing that people do not understand about revolutions in these small countries. The people that arm themselves and have the gumption to take over a government are never the good people. Like, look at the people that ran up in the Capitol. Like, you are those motherfuckers. Like, the people that, like, we would, like, as mad as we get, we would never take up arms against Trump because, first of all, we got jobs, we got shit to do.
We got shit to do.
I got shit to lose. You don't want motherfuckers. Look at Africa. Every time they're on the trucks with guns and they done took over the government. How many bodies are in their wake? So when we ask for revolution in these countries, this shit is bloody, and usually the person that takes over is worse than the last motherfucker. We keep doing this shit in Haiti. Like, I've seen it. But
it's in Haiti. It's and it takes different forms, because even if it's not a revolution, then you got the 3 countries in Central America, Honduras, Ecuador, is gangs and shit. I never understood why the United States is, if we put like a sports metaphor, why they got to go out of state to recruit. We do a lot of like international trade and shit. I never understood why the United States couldn't say, "Hey, look, everybody in the Caribbean, the Central American, come on under our umbrella. Come on over here.
That's
Let
imperial.
That's but even if it's not, I'm not saying let's take over you, but I'm saying you're going to be under our sphere of influence, because all of that stuff with the Cold War was about sphere of influence. Russia had a sphere of influence in Afghanistan. We had to counter it.
But they tried
it does us, but it does us no good. What I'm trying to say is, like we see now with the immigration problem, Central America, they coming up. It does us no good to have these countries in our hemisphere. They struggling, they falling apart, they in turmoil. Because then what ends up happening? We got immigration problems. You got Cubans hopping on boats, dying in the Florida Straits. You got Haitians here in Miami. We trying to get temporary protective status for Haitians, and they acting like that's the hardest thing to do in the world. And it seems to me a lot easier just to say, "Hey, look, let's open up trade. What you got over there, cuz? Give me what you got. I'll give you some
sugar and doctors.
Sugar and doctors. Well, all we want from Cuba right now is baseball players. Now, you could get a Cuban baseball player to play in Major League Baseball before you could get, you know what I'm saying, a nigga to come over here for an internship." And that's the kind of shit that I'm like, it don't make no sense to me.
We should be working with Cuba has some of the best medical services in the world. They have some of the best doctors in the world, but we can't work with them. Why? There's a xenophobia aspect to it, because remember when Obama's biggest push on immigration was not about letting everybody in. It was more about stability in the countries that they're coming from.
And that's basically what I'm talking
about. And that's what you're trying to talk
about.
But as soon as we start talking about that, what does people start screaming? Not my tax dollars. Not to them, them poor niggas and the Mexicans and the fuck that. Nobody wants to fucking help nobody. But then you get mad when they come here for opportunities. Same way your ancestors fucking, not even the same way your grandparents and your
grandparents, nigga, your uncle yesterday.
Yeah, like in regards to the Cubans, you came over this motherfucker. But they don't want that shit for nobody else. But then they also don't want to help stabilize those countries. Like it's. I know exactly what you're saying. At first, it sounded like you were talking about colonizing. And I was like, wait, let's stop that. We don't want to do that anymore. But the idea of stabilizing these countries so that their problems don't become our problems, because they are anyway.
They are anyway.
Because didn't we just pull out? Biden just pulled the troops out of Afghanistan, right? So it's like, how long they've been there for what 10 years now, maybe not that long.
Like
but,
20 years. Bro.
How long are we going to try to prop up these other countries? That's
not
a valid argument in my mind. I think it's kind of
it is, argument. And that's why I wanted, because Alpha was right to kind of massage it. I don't want to say prop up these countries. I mean, just do basic essential business with them. Like, I'm not even talking about we got to go over there and send a presence. If you live in me and Alf come from Caribbean backgrounds. I used to sit in a barbershop with my grandfather for hours as him and his homeboys debated the current state of Jamaica, right? And Jamaica, we don't think of as a destabilized place, but it's a third world country. And they have the CARICOM, which is like the Caribbean United Nations. I'm like, why aren't we doing more work with CARICOM? Like, why aren't we working with these countries in a way that says, hey, look, we're your partner here, dog. Like, instead of we want to partner with everybody else, we partnering with Qatar and Saudi Arabia because they got oil and shit.
Right.
It does us a similar benefit, I think, to partner with these Caribbean islands and with these smaller nations here. Not to say, hey, look, we trying to put our way of life on you, but to say, hey, you got something over there that you want to sell in our market? Cool. Let's figure out how we can make that work.
Well, okay, so here's two things. First, to Parrish's point, military presence is short term, and it destabilizes. It doesn't help stabilize. Like, you can sometimes go in if there are people dying, and you come in with force, for a few months, and hey, cut that shit.
That's the story of Afghanistan. We went in Afghanistan temporarily,
but we've been talking about cutting shit out for about 18, 20 years. But if you do not back that up with economic stability, sustainable economic stability, like, it has to be, like Chris is saying, a form of trade or something that you can do to not prop up the economy, but leave it prop, like teach a man to fish, give a man a fish type of deal.
The country have to be receptive? Because that's I feel like that's Cuba's beef. They're scared we're going to come in and just take over. Cuba
has no problem with aid. Now the
USA thing. I just read a thing this morning. They got $123 million worth of chicken from us last month or something. I'm like, okay, so damn. Well, we giving niggas chicken, we can't,
Like, but the thing is, another problem is there's corruption in these governments. So what happens is Cuba
money get there, and
Cuba wants a certain amount. The government wants if you are a Cuban that wants to send money to your relatives, because this was happening during Obama, the Cuban government takes a portion of it. And a lot of Cubans were like, they don't want to keep and I understand that part. I don't want to keep propping up a government that I don't agree with. So there's a lot of corruption. And the second thing, Chris, to your point, and now there's another reason why we don't work with these countries, because every country you name, what do they look like? Like, let's remember that there's
brown.
Like my dad, I was talking to my dad about this yesterday. He said that Haiti will always be punished for the great sin of being the first free black country in the world. Like, there's a reason that they want to keep these countries poor and destitute, and they do trade it with these countries. But what they do is they give them pennies on the dollar for their goods, or they give them loans with these high interest rates that they'll never pay back. Like, when people actually look at the loans that other countries have given to Haiti, the reason that Haiti is poor is because they owe the rest of the world billions and billions of dollars, and instead of forgiving that debt, what they do is they raise money through the fucking Red Cross, and they give you $10 million, but the country owes you $50 billion. Like, you know what I'm saying? It's just these little. It's like these little, like, superficial. Like, oh, we care about the earthquake, but we gonna keep our foot on your neck when it comes to this debt, because there's no reason a place like Jamaica, a place like Haiti, a place like Cuba, rich in natural resources, motherfuckers came from Spain and Italy and shit to these places. Yes. Because they were so fruitful and fertile. Why are they so poor? They're poor because the rest of the world, the world economy is designed to keep them poor. And the one country that would not play the game was Cuba and Venezuela to an extent. And they didn't want to play that fucking game. And that's part of the reason right there that America don't want to fuck with them. Because Cuba's like, no, we can make it on our own. But now here's the problem. Cuba is suffering right now. So the stubbornness of the Cuban government and the stubbornness of the American government, all this shit, all it always equals is poor people suffering.
It's one thing I just thought about something as you were talking, like the Grand Cayman Islands, Turks and Caicos, they're big, those little smaller countries. tourism is king there. But they've created another resource that feeds what you're talking about. The private, like the banking system. Grand Cayman figured out a long time ago. Oh, y'all ain't gonna help us? That's cool. I got something that you do want though. You can come hold your money over here.
Come hide this money.
Come hide this money over here. And you notice those places they do well because they got millionaires storing money over there. But when you go like on a cruise or whatever, you walk out of that city center and you like, damn, it's poured in a bitch in Grand Cayman. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Like, and so that's the part where and I know it's so much more to it. That's the whole thing about politics and nuance. But I feel like that's a great American sin that we got these countries around us that we just allow, or we facilitate their struggle, their poverty. You know what I'm saying? I think that's morally wrong on so many different levels.
And we can move on to the next topic after this. But the funny thing is, there's not that much of a difference between the American government and these other governments, right? No. Because the greed, it's all about greed, right? Because there is money in Haiti, and it's controlled by less than 1% of the population. And they look a lot lighter than me, most of the motherfuckers. So there's racism within the racism.
Where the president got shot, I was reading an article and they was talking about it so luxuriously on a hilltop gated residence.
Oh, in the mountains. Listen, in the mountains.
And I'm like, damn, y'all niggas up here chilling in this.
They all white, fair skinned. They sound like Haitians, speak like Haitians, speak Creole, but they're not part of the people. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And they live up on the mountains with guarded, with gates and armed guards because they hold all the country's wealth. The one thing that America does different is America gives niggas a little something. They give you a taste. You know what I'm saying? Like they give you just enough to keep you docile.
Them crack rules.
It's
a taste. That first one free, dog.
That first one free. But America will America builds in a safety net because and it's not just out of just altruism. It's because when people fall below the safety net, they get desperate. Mm-hmm. And desperate people revolt.
Commit crime and revolt, yes.
Commit crimes first. And eventually, when ain't nothing left to steal, you start going up the mountains and start taking,
mm-hmm.
And they be on them that let them eat cake shit. You be going up the mountains, and the revolution has begun, as they say.
Revolution has begun. Now, revolutions. Joe Biden gave a big speech this week talking about voting rights. Barack Obama gave a speech a couple of months ago talking about voting rights. And despite all of these speeches, despite, I believe, the pulse of the nation saying it's wrong to restrict voting, these movements are the movement to restrict voting rights is happening all across the South. And it's unstoppable. It's happening. The laws have passed in Texas. The Democrats managed to stall it for a little while, but they've run out of options. They're going to pass their voting rights bill. A lot of these bills will allow for partisan control of elections. Gerrymandering is a huge fucking problem. If you're not up on your civics terms, gerrymandering is basically drawing districts to create safe partisan districts so that we can draw a circle around this spot. It's a lot of Republicans over here. It's always going to be a Republican that's voted up out of that district, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so when Biden gives his speech this week, people love how stringent he was in terms of calling the Republican thing what it is, which is anti-democratic. However, he has not been willing to go so far as to say, let's get rid of the filibuster. Because right now, the only real solution for this voting rights problem is a federally passed law, which cannot happen because Manchin and Sinema, West Virginia Senator, and Sinema from Arizona, have said they will not support removing the filibuster. We've talked about the filibuster on this show before. So I want to know what y'all light-skinned opinion is. I'll give you mine first. I'm resolved to the fact, and I remember I had an argument with a friend of mine. He's a Black Republican, which is, these niggas. And I remember talking to this man, you know what I'm saying?
It's contrarian.
These contrary ass niggas. And I remember he was like, well, I don't see the problem with, having to have, voter ID, blah, 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 blah. I got a grown ass cousin who don't have a driver's license or a voter ID. Grown ass cousin living in South Florida. And I saw this nigga yesterday and I was like, dog, please go.
Yeah.
What you got to do to go and get
you? You need 20?
I'll
let you hold that 20.
Because so basically what I ended up conceding in this conversation with this man was, look, black people, we done had to overcome 1 million obstacles to vote in this country. It looks like we just gonna have to overcome 1,000,005 more obstacles. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Because the Democrats, Manchin and Sinema in particular, they aren't ready to give up the filibuster. And quite honestly, I don't know about giving it up, because then we know that this shit is a pendulum. When the Republicans get in, then they just gonna be able to do whatever they want to fucking do, and that'll be a problem for me. So I haven't made up my mind yet on where I stand on the filibuster. So I've kind of just resigned myself, in my opinion, to say they're gonna make it harder. We've been paying black tax in this country forever. Mm-hmm. This is just another one where we're gonna have to, you know what I'm saying, do more on our get out the vote effort. And I'm hoping, I want them to pass all these fucking rules, and I want us to win that shit again. I want motherfuckers to, black people in general, to show up, vote. I want niggas to still do the fucking absentee ballot shit. I want to jump all the absentee ballot hurdles. Now, what you gonna say now, motherfucker?
Yeah,
I got a driver's license, my signature matched, and I voted blue. And what, bitch? What you gonna hold up on me now?
They gonna say we need retinal scans and shit. I do think real quick. I do think as just a political strategy, I can't believe in 2020 like a filibuster is still like a thing. It seems ridiculous to me.
It does.
Well, it's not. It's just a filibuster symbolically now. It's not like you really have to stand up there and do all the real filibuster shit. Now it's just. It's just
symbolic. It's like, hey, look, I filibuster. I'm going.
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
I just in theory, just be like, I don't agree, so I'm just gonna bullshit my way through this for the next 6 months or whatever. It's like, what?
But it's turned into a to your point, a political tactic to where whoever is in power can stop progress for or whoever is not in power. I'm sorry. Can just put up a wall and say y'all can't do shit, and what?
And it doesn't matter if the president has a mandate of the people.
It don't matter.
That's why, to me, what you're saying about the Republicans, when they get in power, listen, if they win the vote, if they win fair and square, they have the mandate of the people. The people, the majority of people want what they have to offer. Let them get their agenda through. Yeah. And if it's fucked up, we'll get their ass out. But the problem now is people are gonna be mad at the Democrats in a few months, because they haven't gotten enough shit done.
But these are the people who are you? Because you got to be an idiot. You fools? Who are you who's mad at the Democrats for not? Have you watched?
But they read anything?
They don't. Think these people just.
You know how many niggas were? What did Biden do for us? What Biden ain't do shit for us? Like, have you not seen? Like have you tried to see why nothing has happened? But at the same time, Biden ain't doing himself any favors by holding up this filibuster bullshit. But when it gets back to the voting rights thing, I do think the Republicans do this shit all the time. They awaken an apathetic group of people. Like, niggas out here,
that's this big.
And niggas out here, how many niggas be like, man, fuck that vote shit, blah, blah, blah. It don't matter anyway, blah, blah, it's all rigged. But then when you give up the game and say the quiet part out loud, you awaken some, just how you just said, I hope we win that shit again. Niggas in Georgia was like, for years.
Yeah.
They have been disenfranchised for years. And everybody was just like, well, it is what it is. You know what I'm saying? Then Stacey Abrams came out there, and then to fight back against Stacey Abrams, they got real loud about they got really loud about the fact that, hey, we've been trying to disenfranchise y'all. And black people woke up and said, what? Y'all been trying to, and they went out and voted in mass. And I feel like that Texas is going to turn blue. They keep fucking around. You know that fuck around and find out? They are fucking around and they are about to find out. Texas is about to flip blue because they are putting it on Front Street that we are the party of not inclusion, exclusion. I'm sorry. I'm like, we are the party of exclusion. We want the least amount of people to vote as possible. And when you do that shit, you wake people the fuck up.
Because there's an inherent, Georgia made that mistake, like you say, and then so does Texas. The inherent assumption that, these niggas ain't really gonna vote anyway. Like, part of it is we can put all this shit in place. This is enough just to keep their ass out. Right. And but the thing about America, if you want to say, you know, what's good about America is they can't just outright say your ass can't vote. So they can put they can put barriers in place. But as long as people are willing, are spurred, motivated to jump those barriers, they can still vote. And so it's just, I hope that, and I'm also hoping that the middle road people, the independents, the people who are neither liberal or, I'm hoping that them motherfuckers, I'm like, y'all people in the middle, you need to look and see. But that's what they're doing. There's only one party here that's trying to shut people out. There's only one.
When your platform is we need less people to vote. We need less people to engage in civics.
Less people of color to vote.
Exactly. And if they just want less people, period. Like, you know, if that is your view of democracy, like, and that's the thing is they're just so loud about it right now. Like, they used to be smart. They used to do this shit in the dead of night. You know what I'm saying? But and part
Did you
of
hear that shit Rand Paul was saying?
What's that?
This nigga, he wrote a whole op-ed about how, in fact, majority rule is not democratic.
Yes,
and his examples were slavery, because look, the majority of people in the South, they wanted slavery. That was majority rule. So, you know, and I'm like, nigga, are you talking to the world as if we're a bunch of idiots? And that's the part that I think Republicans.
Because the racism in saying the majority of the South were slaves.
That's what I'm saying. I'm like, sir, you're killing your argument with your own words. The whole purpose of the 3/5 compromise was the fact that if we counted all of these slaves as actual people, they would outnumber all of us.
Chris, the racism has just gotten too loud. Like, remember how we talked about the polite racism in the past? Like, Trump brought it out so hard, like it's almost impossible to avoid. Like, we talk about some of these Cubans in Miami, and I don't want to keep painting Cubans with a broad brush, because like literally every one of my Cuban friends who is my age is appalled by the hypocrisy they see from some of their parents, their uncles, and their grandparents. Like, you were just saying, you know, fuck BLM, and why are they protesting in the street? And now you out there with a MAGA sign?
And now you blocking the Palmetto. I was wondering that. I was like, Ron DeSantis, where your riot and act at? They blocking roads, nigga. Shouldn't they be getting arrested?
Not just arrested. I'm supposed to be able to hit them with my car. Like, you remember that shit? And that's the shit y'all voted for. But let somebody hit a fucking Cuban with a F-150. You know what I'm saying? And it's gonna...
I think Jack said something, because you said it too. It's the generational thing. Because I have some Cuban American friends in our age demographic who is cool folks too. And like he said, because we put the Cuban American on them, they American. They've been here. They don't know what it is to be in Cuba. And so a lot of those folks, I did an article once when I was still heavy in my journalism thing, and I was talking to this guy in Miami at the Versailles restaurant, and his whole thing, he was leading a little movement at that time. This was like 2008. And the movement was, he was so hardcore about going back and getting back his family property. My family property. My family owned this piece of land. My family. And as he was talking, I was thinking like, I mean, I'm pretty sure that land is not what you think it is now. Like, it's
that's the thing. They think they're gonna go back in mass and just reclaim all their shit. Like, it's not happening. Like, so
that's
and
shit,
listen,
if it's even still standing, there's people probably living there. There's
what are you gonna
do? Displace all of these people so that you can have your family compound back?
And listen, and I don't want to get too far into it, but a lot of these things that these people want to go get back were ill-gotten in the first place, but that's a whole different.
That's why I brought up Godfather 2, because my introduction to the Cuban Revolution was in Godfather 2 when they had to flee Cuba as the revolution was happening, and who was fleeing? All of these gangsters, crooked politicians.
Yeah.
I know it's just a movie, but
and this is not the majority, but there are some of that shit that people want to go back and get. Like I said, it's ill-gotten. But going back to where I was going with it is like that quiet racism throughout, the older, lighter skin Hispanic Latin community was quiet. Trump brought that shit out to the forefront. So all over the country, you just have, you're showing people your racism. And when you show people that shit, like I said, you wake up an apathetic crowd. And the thing that the Republicans should be striving for is apathy. But instead, then now they're doing all these fire and brimstone speeches that, yes, you might get the racists riled up, but they racist anyway. You ain't making them more racist.
Stacey Abrams and every other Get Out the Vote movement has so much material in fire.
Yes, because of
that. They have so much ammunition to go out into the street and say, hey, look, we need to do whatever we need to do. They don't want us to they tried to close the polls on Sunday. It was so much stuff where I was like, what? How could you listen to this and not feel like, oh yeah, that shit wrong? Let's close the polls early. Let's close them at 6. Bitch, niggas don't get off work till 5. Some niggas don't. Let's close the poll on Sunday. Some people work all week, can't go but on Sunday. I'm like, so they have so much material to offer.
They disenfranchise working class people who are majority black and brown, right? So if an old white person retired can vote anytime. You see them when you go to the polls. They be out there with flags from 8 a.m. to 6 o'clock at night. MAGA, because they ain't got shit else to do. But for a nurse, you know what I'm saying, who works 6 days a week,
12 hours,
1 day off, you know what I'm saying? She had a mail-in ballot is perfect for her. But that's why they want to get rid of it. I mean, they like to claim that they're originalists. I have this image in my mind of, I guess, like at the Constitutional Convention of 1776, a nigga with a white wig on and his colonial hat stands up and he waves his hat. Hold on. Shouldn't we close the polls at yonder 4 o'clock? What? How American is that? Like what? To the closing of the polls itself, like to put time limits on and all of that shit. I'm like, that shit ain't in the Constitution. So you can get off that high horse of like the voting day. Don't open early polling and all that shit.
Vote on this one day. Like, nigga, what does it matter?
Like, what are we doing? What are we doing?
What are we doing? What if I can't get off that day? What if you know what I'm saying? What if
first of all, if you want to do
one day, that shit would be ridiculous. Like
it would be ridiculous.
And then also, then make it a national holiday.
Make it and that's to me is the most obvious thing to do.
I don't understand how that shit ain't. I mean, come on, we know why. If you're the Democrats, why aren't you pushing for that shit?
Because I'm pushing that shit all the time.
It's really hard to vote against that. I mean, they will. You know what I mean? There's enough national holidays.
And businesses will be like, Republicans will come with their argument. Oh, we're gonna lose money, business. You're gonna hurt business if we close it for a day, nigga. Yeah, you'll be all right.
Then you got to work on Labor Day. Then fuck Labor Day.
How about that? You get your bread back.
How about we open the banks on Labor Day? Who gives a fuck about Labor Day? You know what I'm saying? I like it because I get the day off. But if you're worried about money and you need another day, there's Memorial Day, Arbor Day, shit.
Arbor Day,
Putnam trees, something.
Every
day is something. They didn't
social media makes you aware of that. You get on social media and it's like, oh, today is Siblings Day. I didn't know it was
Sibling Day. National Sibling Day. What?
People posting pictures of their brothers and sisters.
Yeah, this national sisters. I'm like, how do you know?
How is this on the calendar?
Like, how do you know the day before? Like, because I don't know until someone else does the shit, and by then it's too late. I'm gonna go find some pictures of my sister and shit. Like, oh, whatever.
My boy said find some. Like, he ain't got none.
Right.
I don't know where my sister.
I'd have to go through fucking Facebook and shit.
Now let's go to our third topic, and this is a topic that I've been trying to see my man through a moderate lens. We're talking about Stephen A. Smith. He's in the press today. He's got two in the press this week. He's got two. In the grand scheme of things, they seem like baby controversies, but in the conversation of Stephen A. Smith, there are just two more pieces of evidence to the fact that this nigga's a black Republican. I think let me just put him like this way: he's a conservative black man. There are some traits of the conservative black man that, if you are black listening and watching this, you will understand. The conservative black man is all about pull yourself up by your own bootstraps, right? Mm-hmm. The conservative black man is anti-government handouts, and anything the government does for you, they deem it a handout. The conservative black man, his primary strategy or tactic is essentially capitalism assimilation, like assimilate into the market.
Acceptance
of this is what it is,
or just acceptance by others.
Yes,
equals success. That is a huge one. Well, you know, I've made it because look at who I surround myself with.
Yes, and if you would just, Bill Cosby had a little bit of this before he got hit up with the rape charges. Mm-hmm. If you would just not be so black,
if you would stop sagging your pants,
yes, if you would just stay off the weed,
yeah,
if you would just, you know, you wouldn't have so much problem with these white men out here. So this week, and I heard when he said it, I had first take on in the background. I was doing some stuff in the house, and I heard this man make his argument, and he knew it was crazy to make it because he was trying to clean it up as he was doing it, about Otani, who is amazing, by the way.
Well, we kind of give some background.
Go ahead.
Well, Otani is a Japanese American. Well, no, not Japanese American, just a Japanese baseball player, a pitcher who hits like Babe Ruth. Like, I mean, and he also pitches like Babe Ruth.
Now, we know a bunch of us don't watch baseball no more. But to have a pitcher who is usually a specialist, to have a pitcher also be a power hitter and a contact hitter, he bat leadoff in the All-Star game, which is a contact hitter's position, is amazing. It would be like having a kicker or a punter who could also be your full-time quarterback. Like,
he is a draw. He's one of the first one of the biggest draws in baseball in a long time, right? Mm-hmm. Because baseball has a terrible track record of marketing its players. And that's where some of what Stephen A. was, I'll let you get into what there's some of what Stephen A. was saying I do agree with, just not the xenophobic racist part of it.
Well, because you made me think about it when he said the quiet part out loud.
Yeah.
Like, right. He didn't say it with enough nuance.
But baseball has done a terrible job of marketing. Like a guy like Giancarlo Stanton, who out here who's as big as a fucking rock, should have been marketed, right? And he's black. Like, you could got black kids in the baseball. You got Jazz down here that plays in Miami, Bahamian kid, black. I mean, just a lightning rod when he hits the field. Like, he's just all this is just excitement every time he's running the bases. Like, there's so many things they could market, but they just don't. Like, what's that? Mike Trout. Is that his name? Mike. If Mike Trout came up to you in Publix and punched you in your neck,
you would be like, "Damn, this big ass white man hit me in my neck."
Would you know it was Mike Trout hitting you?
No, you
Mookie Betts. And so
what was the nigga? Aaron Magruder, not Aaron Magruder, but buddy who had the dreads at one point. Magruder played for the Pirates. I
mean, they had a couple of dread dudes on the Pirates. They've had so many really cool personalities that they could market, but baseball, so it's all about traditionalism and no, it's the name on the front, not the name on the back. No, listen, people watch sports now for storylines. They watch for stars. Like, that's why
sports is the biggest reality show.
Yeah, and people need the connection. Like, nobody cares enough about the Mets anymore. Like, I know, like, I have like one friend Joe, who's still a fan of the fucking Mets. Everybody else is like, they'll check the box score maybe every 6 weeks to see how the Mets are doing. But, like, nobody cares about the teams anymore.
Did you know it was the All-Star weekend?
I had no idea. They were doing the home run. Usually, I like to I check in on the home run derby. I don't know who none of these motherfuckers is.
But anyway, who won the home run derby? I was like, who is this guy?
It's last year. I watch baseball though a little bit, so I know y'all niggas don't watch baseball.
So
what? But go to
Stephen A. Smith. Basically, it boils down to this: the man's a Japanese baseball player. He's huge, and Stephen A.'s point was that if he needs to learn to speak English, because by not speaking English, now remember what I told you about the black conservative man. He's costing himself money. He's not able to properly assimilate into the marketplace. And by doing all of that, he's going to end up causing himself some difficulty or some problems or not attain his full pull yourself up by bootstraps potential because he won't speak or he cannot speak American English.
And it felt like he was blaming Major League Baseball for making him the face of baseball.
Yes.
First of all,
how can you be the face of the sport if you can't speak English? Yeah. Even though he's clearly the biggest draw, like you just were saying.
Now, and where I do agree with Stephen A., and it's hard to parse this without sounding like a bigot, like he sounded like. But there is an issue when your demographic that watches baseball is older and white. All your stars, the biggest stars in your sport, maybe 75% of them, English is their second language, or they don't speak English at all.
Fernando Tatis, there's there's some Hispanic dudes out there who is raw, and they English a little patchy.
There's a disconnect there, but at the same time, there's two problems. Major League Baseball has not done a good job of reaching the demographics that don't care if they speak English or not. Now, Ohtani is breaking all those barriers. I mean, old white men who've been watching the sport for years can't believe what they are seeing, and it's a draw. People who don't give a fuck about baseball like me, like, who? What? There's this pitcher out here ripping bombs like 400 foot home run. Like, I want to see that shit. So you have a guy breaking through all those barriers, and it's Stephen A. And this is the point that somebody pointed. I think it was on Levitar's show, as a voice of ESPN. Like, this is the kind of thing you could use your voice to talk about how good this is. Instead, you just come from that same old bigoted, racist, xenophobic background, and you shit on it.
Yeah.
And also, it's a product that, because he didn't assimilate. It's a product that ESPN owns. Why are you shitting on that's baseball? Just shoots itself in the foot over and over. And niggas like Stephen A. are part of the problem. Like you want to keep going this traditional route, and the sport will die. But if you celebrate the Tatis and the Ohtanis and all these fucking people, that is going to bring more eyes, more diverse eyes to the sport. But you want them to speak English. Like, come on.
I remember when the Marlins came down here, or when the Marlins were instituted in South Florida, one of the big draws was supposed to be the large Hispanic population down here. And because baseball is still huge in the Dominican Republic, still big in the Latin world, Latin America, Latinx Caribbean world. And then I would go, because I like to go to Marlins games. I could care less about the Marlins.
Yeah.
But the Marlins games, the stadium is fly. You know, it's cheap baseball. To get in. Yeah, it's cheap as hell to get in.
Get down there, Cleveland, they get fucked up.
You can drink. Yeah, exactly. That's basically what you're doing there. You know, I've had good times when I go to those games. And every time I go to the Marlins games, I'm introduced to a guy who I'm like, who is this guy? He seems pretty good, right? And then it never fails. The next year, I see that same guy playing on another team and he's a superstar. And I'm like, fuck, you know, the Marlins are doing a poor job here of identifying their superstars and investing in them. But it's not just a Miami Marlins problem. That's a baseball problem in general. And if the guy who is the best player, who is the biggest draw, doesn't speak English, that should not be a huge problem. And Stephen A. made it like it's a huge problem. I'll give you some examples. I was watching Uninterrupted, LeBron's show on whatever, and they had Bad Bunny on there, who's a rapper. And Bad Bunny was on there. He was in the conversation with everybody else. He spoke some English, but he just had an interpreter. And this guy's one of the biggest music artists in the world. When you watch boxing, There are multiple boxers who are quality ass boxers will beat a nigga ass, and then they will stand in the ring afterwards with their interpreter, and they will meet their media obligations. So the language itself shouldn't be this is the one drawback.
But what is the problem? It's not the fact that the language is the problem. The fact is the way you've marketed your sport forever. Mm-hmm. Like baseball has marketed itself as the traditional American sport and ignored the demographic change that was happening within its own league. Mm-hmm. Boxing, how long has boxing been about the great white American hope? And then it became, the great black American hope because the white guys were getting their ass whooped. And then it all became about America. It became about the black boxer versus the Klitschko's. Mm-hmm. We got to beat the Russians. Instead of embracing the greatness of the Klitschko brothers at the time, it became about xenophobia. It became all about nationalism.
I'm a little embarrassed to say that I fell into that because I hated the Klitschko's.
But now, where are the great American boxers? All you got is Deontay Wilder.
Yeah.
And so now you've lost interest in the sport because you did not embrace the globalization of your sport as it was happening. And now it's I don't know if it's too late. But the Stephen A. Smith.
It's too late for baseball, I believe.
I think
baseball is dying a very, very, very slow death.
Two things that are happening in baseball that I disagree with you with, because they are finally starting to embrace the bat flips, the celebration, the running out, trotting out a home run, pimping the trot. They're starting to embrace all these things that young people like to see. Right, they're embracing those Latin American players that come with a little bit more flair than the Mike Trouts of the world. Like I say, who could punch you in the neck and you wouldn't even know who he was. But Jazz, I can't remember his full name. Jazz, the player on the Marlins, that nigga got blue hair, and they're embracing him. And like kids are coming to the ballpark with blue hair. Like they are starting to. I'm not saying they're there yet, but if you look at the MLB account, they be showing bat flips on the MLB Twitter account now.
Here's the thing.
That used to get you hit in the fucking neck with a baseball.
Yes. Now you had a second point. Go ahead and do. You got a second reason why you said you disagree with me, or you?
I forgot the other reason.
Oh, well, I just think the game is too global now. It's too many international players for them to just ignore them.
But here, I feel you. But they're one of the biggest rivals for all that international whatever is the teams in Japan. The Japanese baseball league is fucking huge.
Yeah.
The problem, to counter the whole they embracing bat flips. Nigga, you still got to watch 4 hours of a baseball game to maybe get 2 bat flips.
That's
the second part about it. Like, so
the gameplay needs to change a little bit.
Yes, yeah. I'm around a lot of young people, right? There are kids who don't even watch, who call themselves basketball fans. They don't watch basketball. They just really watch highlight reels. They go on YouTube and they watch, here are all the highlights from the night, and they watch those. So the young people, I think, baseball, that's what they do. They watch the highlights like some of us do, but they don't watch the game, which is why I think the game is going to eventually, and they still haven't done enough. Their biggest stars are where the game is still big. The biggest stars are from Japan, and they're from the Dominican Republic and the Caribbean islands because the game is still huge there. American stars, I don't know God help you if you ever see another real American baseball player who's like
if you don't embrace baseball and the globalization in America, American kids aren't going to want to play baseball.
Right.
It's a self-fulfilling prophecy at this point. If you're not marketing these players, whether they speak English or not, every kid should be amazed by what Ohtani is doing and want to do that shit. But if you're like Stephen A. and you're sitting there saying he can't be the face of baseball, you're shooting yourself in the foot. How are you going to make more American players?
Now, y'all know I was at Stoneman Douglas High School, big baseball program there. The only kids I see playing baseball are white kids, bro. I mean, every time I go by a park, I live over here. We got Central Park right up the road, P. Every time I ride by there, fields are full, and it's all little white kids. And I'm like, damn, what happened to the RBI play? Remember they had the RBI little platform to get more black kids to play? Like, what happened to all of that shit? Because like we've talked about on this show before, if black people ain't in it, it ain't gonna win in the culture in America. Like you're still gonna need us to slide off in there somewhere.
You talked about the Marlins and how they embrace the Latin community. Why are the Marlins not doing anything in Pompano, Fort Lauderdale, Overtown, Liberty City,
Carroll City, yeah.
I mean, you don't even have to leave Dade County. Like
you can go outside. Marlins Stadium is in over. You can go outside and walk like a block.
300 feet in any direction. You will hit a bunch of niggas. Like, why are we this whole idea that Miami is exclusively Latin is I mean,
it's annoying. It is.
And that's why I kind of love what the Heat did this year. I don't know if you guys noticed, like they did a whole series, almost every game on the other Miami, basically highlighting the history of Black Americans. Black Americans founded Miami. Yeah, but like they don't get like there's no props. You know what I mean? Like, and they just act like so. I did like what the Heat did there because recognize the fact that there are more than just Latin Americans in Miami, and the Marlins are not doing anything to reach out. Major League Baseball isn't doing anything to reach out. Like at some point, if you just ignore the demographic, you ignore the changing face of your sport. This is what's going to happen.
They're resting on 100-year laurels. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Now I do want to say this. I know this wasn't on our show schedule, but we got ESPN issues on the screen here. I feel like we can't end the show without talking about Rachel Nichols and Maria Taylor. I feel like
before we get to them, can I play the video? Because you said you haven't seen the video of Stephen A. and the Nigerian Olympic team. Yeah. And this is just an example of you said Black conservative xenophobia. It's all wrapped up right here.
But when you talk about bona fide stars in the National Basketball Association, we can pick at least 15 to 20 of them. Half of them are on this damn roster. There's no excuse to lose to Nigeria. Some dude, Gabe Namdi, who goes by Gabe Vincent for the Miami Heat, Caleb Agata, Namu, or however the hell you pronounce his name. You give up 60 points on threes? Excuse me. You can do better than that. And oh, by the way, let's also look at Greg Popovich because he's a 5-time champion. One of the elite coaches this game.
So disrespectful.
I mean, don't even try to pronounce the man's name. Just dismissive of the.
Well, he was using it to prove his point. He was exaggerating how hard it is to say names as a reason to say this is why, because your name is hard to be pronounced and nobody knows you.
You shouldn't be able to win.
It's even more worse. It's more terrible that the United States lost this game. Can I also say I didn't know that Gabe Vincent was Nigerian.
I didn't know that shit either.
Somebody told me that. They was like, "Oh, the guy from the Heat is playing." I'm like, "What guy from the Heat?" I was like, "Precious, yeah."
Precious, yeah.
It's like,
Casey, they got three players.
It was like the guard. I was like, "What guard?" And I looked, and I was like, "Oh, this nigga is Nigerian." I was like,
yeah,
okay, and good job for you, buddy.
And they said Namdi. I didn't know his name was Namdi. But we can get into Rachel Nichols, but that's just further the myopic view that Stephen A. has at times, and it's like in the NBA. That Nigerian team is full of NBA players, by the way. FK Udo, I mean, just full of NBA.
On the other side of it, because I'm going to mess this young lady's name up, Mika Ogwumike, Nigerian ball player, female, her and her sister, went to Stanford. They some hoopers. She wants to play for Nigeria in the Olympics, but she had her petition denied. By FIBA, the International Basketball Association. It was like, nah, you have too much association with USA Basketball. They denied her and another young lady from the WNBA to play for their native Nigeria. And Nigeria put a statement out saying, basically in very coded, eloquent language, calling it racist as fuck, because they say you'll let Africans play for France. You know, France got 3-4 Africans on their team every year. You let them play for
what's his
Sweden, Spain.
Ibaka was playing for Spain.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, you let them play. You'll let an African citizen play on these European countries. You'll do that quick, but it never works the opposite way. Apparently, it's very hard if you are like dual citizenship or whatever with the African country. Let this complaint tell it. It's very hard for it to go backwards. For someone like a Wumike who's a baller in the United States to say, yo, I want to play for my native Nigeria.
FIBA been shitting on black women a lot. Not just FIBA, just the Olympics, FIBA, everybody. Like The girl who's been fighting for the Haitian Taekwondo team,
yeah,
who made the Olympics, and now they're trying to tell her she can't go to the Olympics for Haiti when she's been fighting every international competition under the Haitian flag, and now they tell her no, I guess because she's an American citizen or some shit. But it's just like, I don't know. It's like there's this Olympic vendetta against black women that we got to get into on some show.
We'll do that on our next episode. And so we'll close with the Nichols and Mariah Taylor thing, because I read a op-ed written by I can't remember this lady's name, written by a woman, and she a black woman, and what she was saying was that Rachel Nichols is what every black professional woman fears. Is somebody who is technically on your side, somebody who is, they will publicly champion what you're talking about, but in private, they don't want your progress at their expense. And so if you were listening, if you know Rachel Nichols, Mariah Taylor, Nichols is on a recorded line. Apparently she left her ESPN stream up and it went to the server or whatever. And that's
somebody I think screen recorded it.
No. She left it up. She left her thing open and it downloaded to the ESPN server.
Oh, okay.
And
that everybody has access to. And then one of Maria Taylor's allies saw it and then sent it to her.
I think it was Woj.
And what she's saying on the thing is basically, yeah, this is good. You want to help her out. You want to do something because you got a terrible record of diversity, but you don't have to do it by taking my thing away.
Yeah.
And to me, and I think Rachel Nichols thought it sounded very, but that to me is it encapsulates low key everything we've been talking about on the show today. Is there are a lot of people who are like, yo, yeah, that's a good thing to do. That would be nice, blah, blah, blah. But
not at my expense.
Not at my expense. It would be nice to help the people of Cuba. It would be good if we open up and we do, but
stabilizes other countries, but no, not with my tax dollars.
The only thing I will say in Rachel's defense, because I mean, she didn't come out there. When I first heard about it, I was like, oh, she pulled a Donald Sterling. She was out there like, this nigga bitch ain't taking my job. But then I kind of heard, I didn't hear, but I read the transcripts of what was said. And I didn't think it was that bad, honest, personally.
I hear you. And I had the conversation with my father-in-law and because that's what I'm saying. Rachel Nichols can you blame her? She like, shit, this is my job. You know what I'm saying? Like, right. I've been working, I want to hold this spot down. So I don't want to, you know what I'm saying? But I'm chastising Rachel Nichols.
No,
the idea behind it.
I will chastise Rachel Nichols because part of the problem is, there's two problems. The ESPN larger issue, and that's why I feel like ESPN got to skate on this shit a lot by Rachel said that shit. But Rachel's speaking to a larger problem with ESPN. First of all, why did they, to achieve diversity, have to push a woman off the panel? You know what I'm saying? Why couldn't Rachel Nichols and Maria Taylor be there? You know what I'm saying? That's one of the issues. But beyond that, what Rachel Nichols has put in work. But what makes Rachel Nichols so exceptional that nobody can take her finals from her? Like, what makes Rachel Nichols so exceptional? And that's the thing, and that's where the privilege comes in. How dare they?
Yeah.
Who are you, Rachel Nichols? Like, who? Like, legit? Who? Like, what makes you so special that they can? Why you got the jump? You got this. You got that. You get every sit down with every player.
And I don't want to sound like I'm defending Rachel Nichols, but it's not that she's exceptional. It's just that she like, damn, this is my
put in
thing.
her time. Right, this is my work.
This is my little spot right here.
Oh, hangover time. They was like, you know what, Alf, man, we want to put I don't know what to do.
We need to improve our Asian American outreach. We want to have Asian American hosts, whoever come take your spot. But now, and this is the part where I thought Rachel Nichols didn't have any nuance. This all happened when she was talking about during the bubble and during 2020. Maria Taylor was out front during all of that. Why? Because it was the summer of racial injustice. Right. And she had made a name for herself on that network by boldly coming out and saying, hey, look, this shit is fucked up. She had the interview when she said, I'm out of words when George Floyd was killed. All the breath went out of me. It was very eloquent. I'm not doing injustice. Maria Taylor was riding a wave, baby. And I felt like Rachel Nichols could have, if she had a little bit more, just sat back and looked at it and said, okay, hold on. It's protests in the street. everybody is doing stuff, whether it's performative in nature or genuine. You know what I'm saying? They're gonna let this young lady, it's her time to be in the catbird seat. And to your point, Alf, it ain't like they took the jump away.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It ain't like you're not gonna be on television. And now here we are at the end of it. You still got replaced by Malika Andrews, a beautiful young African American woman.
But at the same, but it also just lends to the whole problem at ESPN, like this idea that the show has to be a white woman and 3 former players, because we haven't even talked about the fact that unless you're Mike Wilbon or Stephen A. Smith, if you ain't played or coached, they have no job for no black man. Why is it, you see Candace Parker on Inside the NBA sometimes schooling Shaq on basketball? Why are there not more black women or women analysts at all? Doris Burke is one of the best out there, but she is such an exception to the rule. Like the whole problem at ESPN is just they have this formula of pretty white lady, former athletes, or a button-up white man, former athletes, and that's it. Like and that's why when Rachel Nichols is like, I'm the new Michelle Beadle, how they gonna take my fucking, because there's only room for one.
There's only room for one.
And that's where
Highlander shit.
Exactly. What Rachel Nichols missed is like, okay, first of all, there shouldn't only be room for one. And there's no your name ain't on that seat.
It ain't.
Like, it is okay to give other people a shot. Like, you guys are asking me about Hangover Time. The other day I was like, man, I'm gonna be late. Does anybody want to host a show? I'm always trying to get new people to come in the show. Like, I'm not trying to pat myself on the back, but I have 2 LGBTQ black women on my show almost every single night. Like, who else is doing that shit? And did I ever worry like, oh, what are people gonna think? You know what I'm saying? And people at first, I mean, there were some nasty ass fucking comments. But now, if Tiffany or Siobhan ain't on the show, people are like, what? Whoa, this is bullshit. Where's Tiff and Siobhan? Like, sometimes you just have to give people their shot. Let people have their chance, and you can't sit there and gatekeep. And that's exactly what Rachel Nichols was doing. She was gatekeeping that spot. And if you keep gatekeeping, you're never going to give a chance to anybody else. I could have been like, it should be nothing but me and 4 white guys on the show. I could just keep getting, local radio personalities to keep co-hosting the show with me. What's the point of that? Like, what's the point of having a platform, Rachel Nichols, if all you're going to do is sit up there and prop up Kendrick Perkins and Paul Pierce? Like, if that's all you doing, then you ain't really doing nothing. Don't get me started on this house nigga Kendrick Perkins. Rachel Nichols ain't did nothing to me, son. Shut up, yo.
I like Kendrick Perkins though.
Fuck that nigga. That shit bothered the fuck out of me. You ain't had no words from Maria Taylor, but you sitting there caping like a motherfucker for Rachel. Rachel Nichols gave me a job. I can't lose my job. Shut up, nigga.
You made me think though of something. I always wondered why there isn't more outrage, because you said it earlier. I went to journalism school, and I went to school with a lot of very capable and talented young women journalists, right? And a lot of them really wanted to be in sports. But I never forget, we had a colloquium colloquium's like a thing.
Colloquialism.
No, it was a thing called colloquium. It was like a class where everybody came. So anyway, Pam Oliver of the day. Yeah, Pam Oliver came because Pam Oliver, she went to FAM. She comes back every year. She does like a sports writing and journalism workshop. She does it for a week. I did it 3 years in a row with her. She's great, right? So she comes back, and one of the young ladies in the class raised her hand, and she said, I have a concern. And so she's like, oh, what's up? She's like, well, if you look at me, I don't look like I should be on television. Kind of a heavy-set, dark-skinned girl, not ugly or nothing like that. But because you said it earlier, pretty white woman, yada, yada, yada.
I mean, look at the black woman they putting up there. A lot of European attributes of or European aspects of beauty. But go ahead.
And so Pam Oliver is in this thing, and she says to the young lady, all I can tell you is keep trying. She didn't have any response to the question. She couldn't push back and say, no, don't think like that. That's the wrong way to approach it, because that is something that I've wondered for a long time. Women in general, you ain't getting on nobody sports television if you don't look a certain kind of way. And that to me is one of the biggest things that gets swept under the rug, maybe because it's just sports television. But you end up with people like Joy Taylor, who I think is not near. Let me not disparage this young lady.
And I like Joy.
I like Joy, but is she the best possible? My point being, I don't want to talk about Joy Taylor. Joy Taylor, more power to you. You know what I'm saying? But the point being, you could be as talented as you want to be, but there's a visual aspect to that thing.
Look at Joy Taylor and look who she started with, Zaslow.
Mm-hmm.
Joy Taylor got to look like Joy Taylor to do a show with Zaslow. Have you seen
Zaslow? Show with a nigga named Zaslow.
Have you seen Zaslow? Have you
she low key carried that fucking show when they was.
And then when she left, this is radio, by the way. You can't even see these ones. They brought in pretty ass Amber Wilson.
Mm-hmm.
Amber Wilson got it. First of all, Amber Wilson's a fucking attorney. She's smart as shit. She has an attorney husband, and she's a really pretty white lady. She had to be that to host with Zaslow, like,
because you got to have somebody when you do those little promo posters.
Yeah.
I've gone to the Heat, which, by the way, we got to talk about that on another show. They changed the name from the American Airlines Arena. I feel like Joe Robbie. I feel like I'm always going to call it American
I'm always going to
Airlines.
call it AAA.
Like, what the fuck is the FTX Arena or whatever? Anyway, we've been there, and you walk by, and they have a little banner up, and it's Zaslow, who is never well dressed, who's always in terrible dad jeans and shirts that are ill-fitting. You got to have somebody. See, and that's the thing. Apparently, you have to have somebody next to him with who has some aesthetic appeal to viewers and advertisers and whoever. But we don't talk about that aspect of it.
How many black women are on sports radio?
Shit, I don't know.
None. And even all the women on sports radio are good looking. Like Ramona Shelburne, they don't never put her on TV. One of the best reporters out there.
Ramona be on. She do her
be around the horn and shit.
Yeah, but you know what I'm saying. But
I feel what you're saying. She's by far the most qualified. You have to be. She's one of the best basketball reporters they have.
You know,
she don't get no shot, like no big time spot.
But then you have a motherfucker like Kendrick Perkins, who I think I'm sorry, he out there for the minstrel show. To me, sometimes like when you don't like his colloquialism. Like, come on, like, and that's fine. Like, you have to have all kinds of different people. But what makes him more of an expert than Candace Parker or somebody else? I'm just saying, like, the formula that they use just blocks a lot of people out. Like, it just really does.
And Maria Taylor herself is a former athlete. Like, Maria Taylor isn't necessarily like, you know, to that point. She isn't like a black woman journalist who scrapped her way to the top. Outside of Robin Roberts, Robin Roberts and Pam Oliver. And Pam
Malika's a hell of a reporter.
Oh yeah, she's raw, and she did her job in the fucking bubbles. Like she
is a hell of a reporter. That's like, but the thing is, like, even how many natural? Have you ever seen one of them go on TV with natural hair?
No.
Like, I remember,
Malika goes on with that. I mean, it's
curly. It's curly.
Yeah, but I'm talking about, like, I remember seeing Pam Oliver in the airport one time, and my God, I'm like, I guess she was getting her wig game together on the way to the Falcons game, because it looked like she rode with the fucking weave out the window, because her shit was wrapped the fuck around. She looked a hot mess, and I'm like, this lady has to go through this shit to get on TV.
And that was one of the biggest complaints for her last couple. I don't know if y'all remember, there was a dust up between her and Aaron Andrews that was a little similar to this. They started because Pam was the sideline reporter for Fox News, for Fox Sports or whatever. And her hair it was, you know, you out there in the cold and the wind, and you
can't be in the frozen tundra.
you know what I'm saying? But then they start giving more positions or placements to Aaron Andrews, and then Aaron Andrews started climbing the ranks, and then she gets to host the NFL little pregame show, and then she gets all of this. And I remember watching all of that and being a Rattler and having opportunities to work with Pam Oliver up close, and I remember being very resentful for that, because even through all of that, she kept coming back to fam doing her little workshop, and it's kind of like, you know what I'm saying, like, damn, this lady been putting in that work. Aaron Andrews came out of nowhere. She had the little naked look when somebody spied on her, got a little fame off that.
And she got the sympathy of the world.
And she took off. You know what I mean?
She was working before that. I give Aaron Andrews a little props.
She was, but she blew up after that. Like, and I don't even know
but it's all goes back to the fact that you have these women that have to fight because there's one sideline reporter spot.
Just one, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And they can only Highlander shit. There can only be fucking one.
There can only be one. Yeah.
So that therein lies the fucking problem.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you only have one slot, of course people gonna fight over it.
Now the other, and then we can end it here, because that's the problem. But just like we was talking about with, if it was a real free market, there should be, and what we talked about with what we do here, what you guys are doing at Miami Heat Beat, what we participated in over at 5 Reasons Sports, there needs to be more platforms that have similar access. You got ESPN and you got FS1. And FS1 is just, they just following the same ESPN blueprint with conservative hosts, basically.
Yeah.
If you too conservative for ESPN, they run your ass over there to FS1. But there needs to be a greater amount of platforms that are given access, because that's the only way it's going to happen. If you have to work at either ESPN, CBS, Fox, or whatever, this is what it's going to be. You know what I'm saying?
It is happening. It's happening as
it is happening. Because that's what capitalism is supposed to do. Capitalism is supposed to say, okay, well, the market says they want this. Somebody needs to create it. And maybe the market ain't saying we want more female diversity on TV, but that doesn't mean that someone can't take it upon themselves, like you described with Siobhan and them, to say, hey, look, here's a platform we created. It exists.
We talked to the ladies from Dishes and Dimes podcast. Because there's no outlet for them. They just got to create their own.
Exactly.
And
we've had them on the show a couple times.
Yeah. And they did a great job the other day on Heat Beat talking about this whole. They did a much better job than we did. I just made fun of Kendrick Perkins' accent.
I like Kendrick Perkins, man. Kendrick Perkins trying to get his little money, dog.
Bam out of the bio.